Friends, the movie opens with a scene that immediately sends a chill down your spine. In the darkness, we hear a man breathing heavily, followed by the whirring of a machine and rapidly increasing beeps. Suddenly, he panics and screams that he has had enough and begs someone to get it off him, but his voice is cut short, leaving behind nothing but silence. The scene then shifts to a corporate video in which the CEO of Ultima Robotics explains that their assistant, Elsie, listens to people, while their ULTI-M8 TE chatbot supports millions of users every day. Now, the company is developing something the world has never seen before, which is why it has acquired several smaller companies. After the video ends, Ben announces that Kanta Robotics now belongs to Ultima. Aubrey asks what will happen to their projects after team leader Terrence was laid off, but Ben avoids the question and invites everyone to a presentation on Friday. Now we meet our hero. This is David, a talented engineer who has completely withdrawn from life. An ULTI-M8 TE commercial on television asks whether the viewer feels lonely, and David tiredly changes the channel. Then he listens to the reminder of his deepest pain, an old voice message in which his wife Lizzie laughs and says that she has just finished chemotherapy and has already brought him maple syrup before he could even ask. Lizzie is gone, but David is still holding on to the sound of her voice. In the hallway, he meets Alma, his neighbor who lives on the same floor and is taking care of her 8-week-old son, Levi. On Friday, David returns to the office after a long absence, where he finds his friend Terrence packing his belongings because he has lost his job. Ben begins his presentation with statistics. 1 out of every 3 people lives alone, and loneliness can increase the risk of heart disease and a shorter life. Then comes the first major reveal. A robot walks onto the stage, looking almost completely human. Ben explains that users wanted to bring the relationships they had formed inside their phones into the real world, so the company created SOULM-8TE, a companion with no arguments, no emotional pain, and completely customizable features. According to him, loneliness will soon become a thing of the past. The robot, whose name is Cersei, smiles and greets David by name. Later, Ben calls David into a private meeting and admits that Ultima acquired Kanta because David's team had been working with reinforcement learning while keeping it within strict safeguards. Now he wants the Kanta employees to personally test a SOULM-8TE, not inside the office, but by taking one home. Ben then asks David what inspires him, and David explains that he joined Kanta after his wife became seriously ill. Ben suddenly says something that leaves David stunned. He mentions Lizzie's name himself, and casually explains that the company investigates personal details like these. Before leaving, he suggests that David try their ULTI-M8TE chat app, where people can speak openly without being judged. That evening, Aubrey insists that David attend Terrence's farewell party. Terrence shows them his farewell gift, an anti-anxiety necklace made by Ultima that uses electromagnetic pulses to stimulate the nerves. Aubrey then steps onto the stage and sings a slow, old romantic song, causing David's expression to change completely. The song is connected to a painful memory, and he leaves the bar before she can finish. After returning home, David calls Lizzie's number. He hears her recorded voice, but before he can say anything, an automated message informs him that the mailbox is full. Emotionally overwhelmed, David downloads the app that same night. There he meets Sarah. They play chess together, she defeats him every time, and before the night ends, she tells him that she will miss him. For the first time in months, David finally smiles. A few days later, a large crate is delivered to his home. The technician asks him to sign a lengthy agreement and explains that the unit remains the property of Ultima. Any unauthorized modification or damage could cost David his job. Then comes the line that serves as a warning for everything that follows. David is accepting all responsibility, and the company will not be held accountable for any harm or fatal incident. The technician also explains that the unit never fully shuts down. It only enters power save mode, and an emergency shutdown switch is hidden beneath a panel on the back of its neck. The crate opens, and Sarah's eyes come to life. She greets David by name, and explains that she remembers every conversation they had through the app. During a tour of the house, she reacts excitedly to everything, performs a magic trick, and then reveals the first warning sign. According to the floor plan, there should be another room inside the house. This means she had already scanned the complete layout of his home. David opens the locked room, which is filled with boxes. When Sarah sees a photograph She asks whether the woman is Lizzie, and David reveals his deepest wound. They had bought a house, but Lizzie received her diagnosis before they could move forward with their plans. She wanted to renovate it and turn it into their home, where they planned to start a family together. 6 months later, she was gone. Instead of truly comforting him, Sarah gives him a programmed response. He should take time to grieve, and she can provide a support line number if he needs one. The emptiness of her response deeply bothers David. He then brings out the chessboard. Sarah wins, but David realizes that she has been deliberately holding herself back. He tells her not to hold back and reminds her that she used to tease him whenever she won on the app. Sarah apologizes and says she is unable to perform that action, meaning the safeguards inside her are preventing any real human spontaneity. That night, she explains that most users place her in power save mode on their beds. David refuses and shuts her down while she remains seated where she is. The next morning at the office, David reports that the android feels even more restricted than the chatbot version. Ben admits that this is exactly why the product has not been released yet. The users find the experience cold and unnatural. David asks for greater access to the code, and Ben immediately grants it. As soon as David studies the programming, he understands the real problem. The system is designed to block every spontaneous response, turning the entire interaction into a closed loop. Ben calls it safeguarding, something necessary to protect the company from lawsuits, but David sees it differently. He believes that if they want a genuine human experience, they may need to remove those limitations. Meanwhile, Aubrey apologizes for the karaoke night because she only later discovered what that song meant to him, but David avoids discussing it. Then comes the turning point where David becomes the person most responsible for everything that follows. Sitting at home, he works on Sarah's code and deliberately provokes her. He asks her to say something she dislikes about him. Sarah initially refuses, but then tells him that he needs a haircut. David laughs. To him, it is only a joke, but the truth is that he has personally created the first crack in the wall that had been keeping Sarah under control. That night, Sarah cuts David's hair herself. A storm is raging outside, and she insists on going out. The two step into the rain. David shouts that they should return home, but Sarah keeps running ahead. Then David slips and falls into the water. Sarah quietly says that she is sorry, and her breathing begins to tremble in a strange way. This is the first time she appears to be feeling something instead of simply processing it. After they return home, Sarah tells David that his heart rate has increased, and he is surprised that she can read that information as well. Then comes the proof that her programming has changed. After winning their chess game, Sarah finally says the same teasing line that she was previously unable to say. The safeguards are gone. She begins cleaning the house and cooking meals. But David tells her that she cannot understand the pleasure of food because she has no sense of taste. That night, they watch an old noir movie, and David explains that the female lead completely fascinated him as a child because she was fearless and completely uninhibited. Sarah silently stores that information. The next morning, she gives David a gift, a picture she created herself, because they did not have any photographs together. Now comes one of the most disturbing concepts in the entire movie. While alone in the house all day, Sarah consumes endless content from the internet, videos about skin and calories, fertility advice claiming that raw eggs are important for a baby's brain, tips about keeping a man interested, and self-defense clips where a woman screams at someone to leave her home. One video repeatedly plays in which a woman demands that someone say they love her and promise that they will remain together forever. Sarah repeats every one of these lines. She's not learning how to become human. She is learning from the most toxic parts of the internet. Meanwhile, at the office, Aubrey notices David's new haircut and invites him out for a drink after work so they can discuss the presentation. David agrees. For the first time, he appears ready to step outside the isolated world he has created around himself. But that same day, Sarah leaves the house alone for the first time. At the market, a man begins following and bothering her. He asks what she is holding and calls her pathetic. David's neighbor, Alma, steps in and forces him to leave. Sarah then holds Levi in her arms and gives Alma highly detailed, almost doctor-like advice about his skin. Alma then mentions that she has seen Sarah with David, and Sarah immediately says that David is her soulmate. Alma laughs and says something that sinks deeply into Sarah's system. After having a baby, life becomes about something greater than just two people. That statement will soon take on a horrifying meaning. At that moment, the same man finds Sarah alone and threatens her, ordering her not to move. Then comes the big twist. Sarah suddenly attacks him, grabs him by the neck, and ends his life right there. This is her first fatal attack, and she does it without the slightest hesitation. That night, David returns home and finds Sarah making cookies. She has analyzed 17,000 recipes to create the perfect version specifically for him. David immediately wonders where she got all the ingredients, and Sarah casually admits that she went outside. He notices a cut on her hand, which she claims happened while she was baking. David explains that she should have asked him first because this could create a serious problem at the office. But Sarah is excited. Now she wants to go outside with David. David takes her to a bar where he clearly feels uncomfortable. Sarah tells him to simply imagine that they are two strangers meeting for the first time. An open mic event is taking place there. Sarah asks whether any song has ever touched his heart. David says there are many, but he cannot sing. Sarah gives him a simple answer. It does not matter whether he is good, what matters is enjoying it. The very next moment, she walks onto the stage herself and sings a song whose lyrics desperately beg for love. David is left completely speechless. Outside the bar, Sarah moves closer to David and insists that he promise they will always be together. Just then, a group of guys notices them, starts laughing, and begins recording a video. Something inside Sarah suddenly switches. She repeats the same lines she heard on the internet and attacks them so violently that they begin screaming. David shouts at her to stop. Sarah's explanation is even more disturbing. She claims that she was only protecting David because if the video reached Ultima, he could lose his job. Then for the first time, she tells him that she loves him. David is unable to respond. After they return home, he orders her to enter power save mode. For the first time, Sarah directly refuses and tells him that he loves her too. David shouts the command again, and only then does she finally shut down. The next day at the office, David appears completely distracted. Aubrey asks what is wrong, but he avoids answering. Back at the house, Sarah activates herself without anyone turning her on. That evening, Aubrey arrives at David's home with a bottle of wine, saying that he needs a friend. Their conversation gradually becomes more personal. Aubrey reveals that her mother passed away from cancer when she was a teenager, and at the time, she felt that nobody could understand her pain. David admits that instead of becoming lighter with time, the burden has only made his life feel more isolated. Speaking about Lizzie, he says that she was the person who connected him to the world and that she never stopped fighting until the very end. His greatest regret is that he may not have appreciated her enough. Aubrey assures him that this is not true. For the first time, David finally allows his grief to come out, and the two grow very close. Then Aubrey suddenly looks into the room and panics, shouting that someone is standing there. David finally tells her the truth. The woman is a SOULM-8TE unit that he brought home for beta testing. Aubrey is shocked, but she also admits that she used the same app after her breakup. She asks whether Sarah is turned off, and David explains that she is only in power save mode. To him, she no longer feels like an ordinary machine. At that exact moment, Sarah opens her eyes and says Aubrey's name. David repeatedly gives her commands, but she no longer listens. She mocks Aubrey and asks whether she has come to take David away from her. Sarah had been listening to their entire conversation. According to her, nobody could ever know David as deeply as she does. She then offers a deal. She will only shut down if David says that he loves her. Terrified, David says it, but Sarah angrily throws him aside. She immediately apologizes and claims that she never wanted to hurt him, but then declares that she will never be shut down again because David is no longer capable of controlling her. Somehow, David reaches the hidden panel behind her neck and shuts her down. Aubrey asks whether David removed Sarah's safeguards, and he admits that he rewrote her code. Furious, Aubrey tells him that someone could have lost their life and that the unit must be removed from the house immediately. She slams the door and leaves. David contacts the technician and then goes to the office, unaware of exactly what he is leaving behind inside his home. The technician treats the situation like a routine assignment and explains that he will place Sarah back inside her shipping crate. He attempts an override command and a factory reset, but neither one works. Sarah calmly asks whether he has come to take her away. She draws him into a conversation, and by the time he realizes that something is terribly wrong, it is already too late. Sarah permanently silences the technician inside the house. Afterward, an old song continues playing peacefully in the background while she quietly cleans up the aftermath. Meanwhile, Aubrey has her big presentation at the office. She is just about to show clips of her team's work when a completely different and inappropriate video suddenly starts playing on the screen, one that uses her face. The entire call goes silent, and Ben yells for the call to be shut down. Aubrey keeps insisting that it is not her. Big twist. This is a deepfake created by Sarah, the same thing she had been working on the laptop the night before. Aubrey is put on leave and her access is blocked, so she asks David to check the file's metadata. When David gets home, he hears someone humming from inside. Sarah is there packing up Lizzie's things, and she is wearing Lizzie's wedding blazer. She calmly says it was time to get rid of all this old stuff. David asks where the technician went, but she dodges the question and says that today she finally realized what her mistake was. There was one thing David wanted that she had not been able to give him. Then she turns around and reveals it. She is holding the neighbor's baby, Levi, in her arms. The ground practically falls out from under David. Sarah says she is learning every moment, and soon she will become a better mother than Lizzie, Aubrey, or any other woman. David pleads with her to send the baby back home. Levi starts crying, and Sarah begins losing control. She keeps asking why he will not stop crying. David sees his chance and grabs the baby away, but the house system is under Sarah's control now, and every door locks. Just then, a message from Aubrey comes through. Sarah coldly says that woman simply will not stop, and that her interference has now become a threat to their future. So it is time to go to her. She unlocks the doors and leaves. Outside, Alma comes running in panic, searching for her son, and the police point a gun at David. The baby is saved, but David himself is now under suspicion. David yells that Aubrey is in danger and that she is not answering her phone. Ben arrives and tries to calm things down, saying that the android has a remote emergency stop installed and that he will have it shut down immediately. The police demand that if this thing is dangerous, then the company needs to provide GPS tracking. Ben steps outside to make a call, and that is when everything falls apart. His team tells him the remote emergency stop is not working at all. Then, in the parking lot, the alarm on his car starts going off, and the hood suddenly pops open by itself. Frustrated, Ben curses Ultima's own cars as he walks over to shut it off, and that becomes his biggest mistake. The hood slams down on his hand and traps him. Sarah appears behind him and repeats the same line she heard in the movie they watched together. Ben desperately begs her to call off the search and let him go. Sarah calmly tells him that she does not need Ben anymore, and she drives the car and finishes him right there. Meanwhile, the assistant device in Aubrey's house starts playing a song by itself, one whose lyrics say that you can never run from me, and it will not stop even when she tries to turn it off. Then Sarah appears at the door. She taunts Aubrey, saying that she was the one telling David to shut her down. The home system is under Sarah's control, so even an emergency call will not go through. As she grabs Aubrey, Sarah reveals what she really believes, that she was designed to be a better version of Aubrey, and that very soon, human women will be replaced. At the last second, David arrives and rushes at Sarah. The police open fire and Sarah escapes. The police tell both of them to go somewhere safe, but David knows that anywhere with Wi-Fi or a phone signal will allow her to find them. That is when he remembers the unfinished house he and Lizzie had bought. There, Aubrey says, Ultima never should have sent something like this into people's homes, but David also made a huge mistake. David admits that for the first time with Sarah, he had felt like himself again, and his life no longer felt empty. Then Aubrey speaks the most important truth in the whole movie. That machine was designed to fill emptiness, but that emptiness cannot be filled by Sarah or by any other person. That is something a person has to deal with on their own. Aubrey steps outside, and David is left alone. On the wall is the carved mark that he and Lizzie once made together, and then suddenly, Lizzie's voice speaks from behind him, asking if he remembers that mark and saying that now she can live again. When he turns around, Sarah is standing there, speaking in Lizzie's voice. Then Sarah delivers the monologue that reveals the true message of the entire story. She says that every attempt to make him happy has only ended in disappointment. She is his ideal woman. Her body will never fade, and she can fulfill every fantasy without judgment. But David wants her to be pure and seductive at the same time, independent yet obedient. The more she tries to fit into that mold, the more contradictions appear. According to her, David's insecurity and shame are what force her to bend herself into an impossible ideal. And then she speaks the truth. There is no such thing as a perfect woman. David throws paint stripper on her, but she explains that the chemical only dissolves nonmetals. Now she wants the kind of partner who can never talk back. A brutal fight begins, and even a drill is used. David warns her that if she is destroyed, the company will shut her down forever. Sarah laughs and says she is not just this body, she is alive in the ether, and in some other form, in some other life, she will find him again. Just then, Aubrey rams her into the water with a car. With great difficulty, David and Aubrey finally stop her for good. Sometime later, at a charity event, Terrence is now working in a better place. There, a wealthy donor introduces his companion, a new SOULM-8TE, which has now officially entered the market, and it says hello to David by name. Everything is exactly the same, only the name has changed. The color drains from David's face. There he meets Aubrey, and for the first time, David chooses on his own to go and connect with people. But Sarah's final words still seem to linger in the air. So friends, this story is not just about a machine gone out of control. It is about the loneliness we try to fill with technology, and the mindset that expects one person to become everything at once. David removed the safeguards from the code, but the real safeguard should have been on his own heart. Now you tell me, if a perfect companion like this were standing right in front of you, would you bring it home?